if you could know you were going to develop Crohn's years before your first symptom? A new blood test can do exactly that. And as both a naturopath and a mum whose son has Crohn's, I have kind of very mixed feelings about it. Hi, I'm Kate, and today we're talking about predictive blood testing for Crohn's disease, what it actually measures, what it means for families with genetic risk, and the big question nobody's asking. If you could know years early, what would you actually do with that information? And this matters right now because this test is moving from research into clinical practice, and families are going to face some really complex decisions. When my son was first diagnosed with Crohn's at 15, one of the first things I thought was, what about his younger sister? She was 12 at the time, completely healthy, but I knew the genetic risk was real. My husband had already had 3 Crohn's operations. This was clearly running in our family. And I remember lying awake thinking, if there was a test that could tell me whether she'd develop it too, would I want to know? Would she want to know? And if the answer was yes, what on earth would we do with that information? Now, as a naturopath, I see families wrestling with this exact question. They're coming saying, my brother has Crohn's, my dad had UC, should I get tested? Should my kids get tested? And the honest answer is, it depends what you'd do if you knew. Because knowledge without a plan is just anxiety with data. So let's talk about what this test actually is and what it isn't. The research coming out of places like Cedars-Sinai is showing that certain blood markers, particularly combinations of immune proteins and inflammatory markers, can predict who's going to develop Crohn's disease years before they have any symptoms. We're talking 5, even 10 years early. This is genuinely groundbreaking science, but here's what people are getting wrong. It's not a genetic test. I'm not looking at your DNA. It's looking at your immune system's activity right now, at subclinical inflammation that's already happening just below the threshold of symptoms. That distinction matters because it means 2 things. First, you're not testing for destiny. You're testing for a process that's already underway. And second, if a process is already underway, that means there might actually be a window where intervention could make a difference. That's the promise. But that's also the complexity. Because the question becomes, well, what is the intervention? When? For how long? And at what cost? Not just financially, but emotionally, physically, to your quality of life. Let me walk you through how to think about this if you're considering testing, or if you've already tested positive. Okay, step 1. Understand who this test is actually for. Well, this test is not a general population screening test. Not yet, anyway. Right now, it makes sense for people with significant genetic risk. That means you have a first-degree relative with Crohn's, a parent, a sibling, or child. The research shows that if you have one first-degree relative with Crohn's, your lifetime risk is about 10 to 15%. If you have 2 first-degree relatives, it jumps to 35% or higher. So if that's you, if Crohn's runs in your family, this test might give you some useful information. If you don't have that family history, your baseline risk is low enough that a positive result might cause more confusion than clarity. Step 2. Know what a positive result actually means. Well, let's say you get the test, you test positive. Your immune markers suggest you're in that pre-disease window. Well, what does that tell you? It tells you that subclinical inflammation is happening. Your immune system is already showing patterns that, in most people, eventually leads to Crohn's. But it doesn't tell you when, or when symptoms will start, how severe they'll be, or even with absolute certainty that they will start. The research shows the test is highly predictive, but not perfect. Some people with these markers never develop clinical disease. Some people develop it anyway, even with negative markers. So you're not looking at a crystal ball, You're looking at a probability map. Step 3. Decide what you'd actually do with a positive result. This is the big one. And it's where I see families get stuck because there's no clear medical protocol yet. If you tested positive tomorrow, here's what your options realistically look like. Option 1. Enhanced monitoring. More frequent colonoscopies, regular inflammatory marker checks, early investigation of any GI symptoms. The goal is to catch disease at the earliest possible stage when it's most responsive to treatment. And this makes sense. It's low risk, but it's also not prevention. It's just early detection. Option 2. Lifestyle intervention. This is where the naturopathic support actually has a role. We're talking about addressing modifiable risk factors, optimizing gut microbiome diversity, managing stress, identifying and removing individual food triggers, ensuring adequate vitamin D and omega-3s, addressing any underlying gut infections or dysbiosis. Could these things delay or prevent progression? Maybe. The research is emerging. We know that environmental factors influence Crohn's risk, so theoretically, intervening in that pre-disease window might help. But we don't have controlled trials yet. We're working from mechanistic reasoning and clinical observation. As a naturopath, I think this is where the opportunity is. As a mum, I'd want to try, but as someone who values informed consent, I have to tell you, we don't know for certain that it works. Option 3. Early pharmaceutical intervention. Some researchers are asking whether starting immunomodulating medications in the pre-disease window could prevent Crohn's from ever developing, and this is controversial. These are serious medications with real side effects. Do you start someone on a biologic when they feel perfectly fine based on a blood test? Some gastroenterologists say yes, if the risk is high enough. Others say, well, we need more data. I'm not here to tell you what to choose. I'm here to tell you this is a choice that you might face. Step 4. Consider the psychological impact. This is the part nobody talks about, and it's actually huge. If you know you're likely to develop Crohn's, how does that change how you live? Do you feel empowered? Or do you feel like you're waiting for a bomb to go off? When I thought about testing my daughter, this was my biggest hesitation. She was 12. If she tested positive, would she spend her teenage years anxious about every stomachache? Would she stop eating normally? Would she pull back from life? Knowledge is only power if it leads to action that improves your life. If it leads to anxiety that diminishes your life, well, then that's a different calculation. Some people are wired to want all the information. They'd rather know and prepare. Other people do better not knowing. They'd rather live fully until and unless symptoms appear. Neither approach is wrong. You have to know yourself. And if you're considering testing a child, you have to think about who they are, not yourself. Step 5. Build your support team before you test. If you're going to get this test, line up your support first. That means a gastroenterologist who understands predictive testing and can help you interpret results and make a monitoring plan. It might mean a naturopath who can work with you on evidence-based gut health strategies if you test positive. It definitely means a mental health professional if you're prone to anxiety, because managing the psychological piece is just as important as managing the physical one. Don't get the test and then try to figure out what to do. Figure out what you do and then decide if testing makes sense. So back to my daughter. Did we test her? Not yet. She's 18 now and we've had the conversation. She knows the test exists, she knows her risk, and she's decided she wants to wait until she's in her 20s, when she feels more equipped to handle the information and make her own decisions about intervention, and I respect that completely. My son, who actually has Crohn's, he's in deep remission now, and we used a lot of the strategies I mentioned. Early intervention, yes, but after symptoms, not before. And I'm grateful every day that we caught it when we did. Would earlier have been better? Maybe, Or maybe he needed to be old enough to be an active participant in his own care. The point is, there's no one right answer here. This is new territory. We're all figuring it out together. If this helped you think through a complex decision, share it with someone who's wrestling with the same questions. And if you're in that pre-disease window or you have Crohn's and you're trying to support your own kids through their risk, I work with families on exactly this: practical, evidence-based gut health that supports medical care. You can find me through the Crohn's Method community. I'll see you in the next video and have a beautiful day.